Have you ever felt the subtle electricity in the air when someone enters a room but they say nothing, do nothing out of the ordinary, and yet something deep inside you whispers, they care? Have you ever sensed that someone holds a soft, sacred space for you in their heart, even though no word of love has ever crossed their lips? The truth is, love often speaks its own secret language, one that isn't verbalized, but is deeply felt. It lives in the quiet moments, in the silences that feel full, not empty, in glances that linger longer than logic allows, in the presence that heals even when it's not declared. As a student of human psychology and spiritual wisdom, I've come to see that the most powerful expressions of love are not always the loudest. Carl Jung, the renowned Swiss psychiatrist and spiritual thinker, once said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." And yet, so often, these transformations happen invisibly underneath the surface of ordinary life. Today, we begin a journey not to chase love, but to recognize it when it's already around you, perhaps silently waiting to be seen. Let's begin with the first layer of the unspoken language of love. 1. Mirroring, when someone reflects your soul back to you. One of the most fascinating and often overlooked signs that someone is emotionally drawn to you is something psychologists call mirroring. This is when a person unconsciously imitates your posture, your tone of voice, your gestures, even your preferences. They may begin using the same words you use without realizing it. They laugh in a similar rhythm. They pick up the same hobbies you once casually mentioned. Why? Because when we feel connected to someone, our subconscious seeks to enter their world. We do this not to manipulate, but to belong. Jung would say that the psyche seeks wholeness, and when a person sees something of themselves in you, or something of you that fills a part of themselves, they will unconsciously begin to align with it. So if someone you know has slowly, silently started echoing your essence, it may not be coincidence. It may be love unfolding not in confession, but in reflection, personal insight. In my own life, I've seen this happen when I wasn't even aware I had such a deep influence. A friend once mentioned how he began listening to the same obscure music I loved, though I'd only mentioned it once in passing. At first, I thought it was just shared taste, but later, I realized it was a thread of silent admiration. Mirroring is one way love reaches out without breaking the safety of silence. 2. The paradox of withdrawal. Why they pull away at the wrong time. This is one of the most confusing and painful signs, but it's also deeply revealing. Sometimes, those who feel the deepest love are the ones who distance themselves when you most expect them to move closer. They might suddenly change the subject when things get emotional. They may avoid you in group settings or become awkward when someone else shows interest in you. Why? Because love, especially when unspoken, brings vulnerability. And for someone not ready to be exposed, closeness becomes threatening. They're not pulling away because they don't care. They're pulling away because they care too much. The heart, overwhelmed by emotion, often retreats into the shelter of avoidance. Expert reflection. From a psychological point of view, this is a defense mechanism known as emotional repression. It's especially common in people who have been hurt before or who are not yet emotionally mature enough to handle the intensity of love. Their retreat is not rejection. It's an inner battle between desire and fear. 3. The language of play, jokes, teasing, and emotional peekaboo. There's a curious phenomenon in human behavior. When someone deeply loves but cannot confess it, they often revert to playfulness. This might come in the form of teasing, pranks, or slightly odd jokes. On the surface, it may seem immature or even irritating. But look deeper. There's a reason why this person goes out of their way to get your attention, even if it's through mockery. They're creating opportunities for interaction. They're seeking emotional contact without emotional exposure. Lesson from Jungian thought. Jung believed that the inner child never leaves us. When love is unacknowledged, the inner child takes over and finds alternative routes to feel close to the object of affection. Play is one such route, safe, unserious, but deeply meaningful. So the next time someone pokes fun at you just a little too often, don't dismiss it outright. It might be their safest way of saying, I see you. I like being near you. For the memory vault, they remember what you forget. This is one of the clearest, yet least spoken about indicators of hidden love. When someone remembers a tiny detail you mentioned months ago, your favorite childhood snack, that one book that changed your life, or the name of a pet you lost as a child, it reveals a deep, attentive presence. We don't remember what we don't care about. The mind naturally filters what doesn't hold emotional charge. So if someone retains what you yourself forgot, they've stored it in their emotional memory bank. You matter to them more than you think. Personal commentary. In my coaching practice, I often ask clients to reflect not just on what someone says, but on what they remember. Memory is love's filing cabinet. The deeper the drawer they open, the deeper their connection to you. 5. The glance when no one's watching. There's something profoundly intimate about the furtive glance, the one that happens when you're unaware, lost in thought, or engaged in something else. If someone watches you when they think you won't notice, there's a good chance they feel something they can't say aloud. These are not predatory or invasive glances. They are soft, observant, almost devotional. It's as if they're memorizing the contours of your existence. Carl Jung taught us that the eyes are the window to the soul. But more than that, the unguarded gaze of one unprepared. Unposed is a soul calling to another. A real-world analogy. Think of how we look at art. We stare not because we expect it to look back, but because it stirs something inside us. In the same way, a glance filled with quiet may not demand your attention, but reveals their reverence. 6. The sacred listener, when they hear more than words. In an age where most people listen to reply, few people listen to understand. Fewer still listen to feel. But someone who secretly loves you, they hear everything. The words, the silences between them, the shift in your voice when something's wrong, even when you say you're fine. They remember the pain you try to hide, the hope you shared in half sentences, and the dreams you were too shy to believe in out loud. This is not ordinary listening. This is devotional listening. Spiritual insight. In many ancient traditions, to truly listen to someone is to spiritually embrace them. It's a form of presence that's healing in itself. So when someone becomes your quiet witness, your unspoken sanctuary, they are, in fact, loving you in one of the most intimate ways possible. 7. They behave differently around you. Another powerful sign is behavioral contrast. Someone who is generally relaxed, casual, even flirtatious with others but becomes reserved, cautious, or nervous around you is not doing that randomly. Conversely, they might be quiet with everyone else, but with you, they shine. Either way, the shift is significant. Why does this happen? Because love alters the emotional landscape. It brings up fears of judgment, rejection, or the overwhelming need to make a good impression. They're not being inauthentic. They're being hyper-present, sometimes to the point of awkwardness. Reflection as a guide. As someone who spent years studying human behavior in both spiritual and therapeutic settings, I can tell you when the heart is activated, the nervous system follows. That means fidgeting, overthinking, sudden shyness, or bursts of unexpected laughter. It's not inconsistency. It's the visible dance of hidden affection. Next, what happens when love becomes quiet care? We've explored 7 of the most revealing signs that someone may be loving you in silence in ways so nuanced, you might have missed them entirely. But love isn't just reflected in emotion. It is also translated into action, often in the quietest, most overlooked gestures of all. 8. The care beneath convenience. When they quietly look after you, you may not realize it at first. Maybe they bring you coffee before you ask, or they remind you of something you almost forgot without making a show of it. Maybe they send you a song that perfectly captures your mood, though you never told them how you were feeling. This is not ordinary kindness. It is intentional care disguised as everyday thoughtfulness. It is a subtle, sacred way someone loves you when they are not yet ready or able to say it aloud. These acts of service, small as they may seem, are often a person's deepest way of being near you for you, and with you, even if they can't be open about it. Expert reflection. In Buddhist psychology, we often speak of Carl compassion in action. When love manifests as silent service, it transcends the need for reward or recognition. It is love that expects nothing but gives everything. This, to me, is among the most spiritual forms of affection. 9. They're there when you're not okay. One of the purest signs of real, hidden love is how someone shows up not when you're successful or happy, but when you're hurting. There are those who only come around for your light, but someone who secretly loves you will sit quietly with you in your darkness. They won't always have the right words, but their presence will say, "I won't let you go through this alone." And often, they won't even let you know why they're there. They just show up. That's it. No expectations. Just quiet loyalty. Personal insight. In my own experience, the people who love you most are often the ones who ask the fewest questions when you fall, but are the first to pick you up. They don't need explanations. They just need to make sure you're okay. And sometimes, that's all the love in the world. 10. The way they defend you in your absence. This is perhaps one of the most powerful indicators of hidden love. You'll never know about it unless someone tells you. But the person who loves you in silence, they will defend you when you're not around. They will protect your name. They will correct misinformation, shut down gossip, and speak of your worth with reverence even if you never hear about it. Carl Jung's mirror. Jung believed that our shadow, the unseen, repressed side of us often contains our most powerful emotional truths. Sometimes, a person's defense of you is a projection of their own hidden tenderness. They can't say they love you, but they honor you through their actions. To me, this is the kind of loyalty that cannot be faked, and it's a love more real than 1,000 declarations. 11. They seem to know what you need before you do. This is more than intuition, it's attunement. Some people are so emotionally connected to you that they begin to feel with you. Before you ask, they offer. Before you speak, they understand. Before you break, they hold space. This type of love transcends logic. It operates in the realm of energy, sensitivity, and soul-level empathy. Spiritual viewpoint. Many Eastern traditions recognize this phenomenon as a form of karmic resonance. Two souls that have known each other across lifetimes, connected not by accident, but by dharma, will have an uncanny ability to recognize each other's needs without being told. I've seen this again and again in spiritual circles, in healing spaces, in love stories that never made it to the surface but changed both people forever. 12. The deep discomfort when you're with someone else. This sign is not always obvious, and certainly not always easy to witness. But when someone secretly loves you, their body language often betrays their heart when you're with someone else. You may notice them become unusually quiet, or oddly cheerful, or, in some cases, absent. It's not jealousy in the dramatic sense. It's a kind of emotional fracture, an ache they hide behind a smile. They may support you, say all the right things, and wish you well. But if you look closely, you'll feel something tight in the air around them, something unspoken, a moment of invisible grief. What this means, this isn't about possession or entitlement. It's about longing without permission, loving without a container, caring without a contract. It's a bittersweet kind of love, but it's real and it runs deep. 13. They speak highly of you to others, often without realizing it. Have you ever had someone come up to you and say, "So-and-so was talking about how amazing you are," and you're surprised because that person barely gives you compliments directly? That's not an accident. When someone truly admires you but isn't ready to confess it, it will still leak out through others. They speak of you often. They highlight your talents, your character, your strengths. Sometimes they even exaggerate the smallest good things you've done. Why? Because love must express itself somewhere. And if it can't come to you directly, it will find another path. My reflection: I've often found that admiration is the first cousin of love. And when someone holds you in high regard, even their silence has echoes. When they speak of you in your absence with awe or joy, they're giving away what the heart cannot hold in. 14. They show you their vulnerable side rarely, but deeply. There's a moment, often brief, sometimes accidental, when someone who loves you secretly lets you in. Maybe they tell you a story about their childhood, or fear they've never voiced, or a dream they're embarrassed to pursue. They won't do this often, and when they do, they might brush it off quickly, but that one moment is a doorway. They're inviting you quietly, tentatively into their inner world, and whether or not you step through, they've already offered something sacred. Spiritual insight, vulnerability is the soul's fingerprint. No two are the same. And when someone shows it to you, even once, it means they trust you with a piece of their truth. In my view, there is no higher compliment and no clearer sign of emotional investment. 15. You feel it even if you don't understand it. Let's set aside psychology, logic, and even behavior, because at the end of the day, there's one sign of love that defies all categories. You just feel it. You may not have words for it. You may question it, doubt it, dismiss it, but the body knows, the heart knows, the soul recognizes. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." I believe part of that becoming is learning to trust your intuition when it tells you, this person loves you. They may never say it, but they do. From my heart to yours, in the silence, in the in-between spaces, in the moments that pass without applause, there is often a love more real than anything shouted from the rooftops. If you're feeling it, you're probably not imagining it. A closing reflection: not all love needs to be declared to be real. Some love stories never become relationships. Some hearts never confess their truth aloud. Some souls meet only to hold space, not to hold hands. And that's okay, because not all love needs to be acted upon to be transformative. Some love is meant to be a quiet miracle, a gentle force that makes you better, deeper, softer, even if it never finds its voice. If someone loves you in silence, consider a blessing. You were a home to someone's soul, even if only for a moment. And if you love someone in silence, remember, you've given a gift already by holding them in your heart with care, intention, and grace. If this video touched something inside you, if you recognize someone in these words, or perhaps even recognize yourself, take a moment to honor that. Love is not always about having the right ending. Sometimes it's about becoming the right person. Comment below and tell me, have you ever experienced love like this quiet, invisible but unforgettable? Share this video with someone who might need these words today. And if you want to keep exploring the depths of human emotion, love, and spiritual insight, subscribe, because we're just getting started on this journey together. Remember, you are worthy of love that doesn't need a shout to be true. You are seen. You are loved, even in silence.